Today we're at the Pima Air and Space Museum with our friends Courtney and Steve from A Streamin' Life. Let's go check it out.
So Courtney and Steve have been living in an Airstream full-time longer than we have.
By a little bit.
They bought their Airstream the same place we did, from Denny as well. They also have a 30-footer. They also like cameras, and they also have a YouTube channel. So if you're not already following them, we assume you probably are all following them already, but their YouTube channel is A Streamin' Life.
And we've been stationary, unlike these guys, since we moved in, but we'll be moving soon. April 1st, we leave Tucson, so.
And they're cool because they're way better at money than we are. They are retiring. All four of us are in our early 30s, but they're retiring and we're a slave to the man for the next little bit. That is sweet. Check this out. Just like on race cars, on aircraft and spacecraft, they have these bolts and then they drill a hole through the head of it and run these safety wires. That prevents it from backing itself out during flight, so you know that bolt's gonna stay there. Ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be an astronaut. Then when I got into high school, I wanted to be a commercial airline pilot. And I remember doing so many reports on the Wright brothers and other famous pilots, so it's really cool to be here at this museum where I can see some of this stuff up close.
It's so tiny!
You see those white portholes? They fly over the airfield, launch flares out of those portholes, light up the field, circle around and land.
Have you ever seen an exhaust pipe like this?
Holy cow. This is an F-14 Tomcat. I had a little model of these when I was a teenager. And what they do is when they're flying real fast, the wings sweep back. And when they need more loft, the wings swing out. And so they actually pivot right here. This is in the back position. It also helped them when they landed on aircraft carriers. They could land and then tuck the wings in and park more of them on the deck so they didn't have to take up so much room.
The U.S. Navy aircraft carrier decks developed a system of color coding people. They wear different color shirts and life vests based on what their job is, just so they can make sure everybody's where they're supposed to be and it's obvious what that person's job is.
It's amazing that we actually get to go up and touch them. They're not just like up on display.
This is the American flag that was on board the SR-71 on its record transcontinental flight on March 6, 1990. It flew from coast to coast in 67 minutes and 54 seconds at 2,000 miles per hour, 24.5 miles an hour. You know, this was in the 70s. They had jets going that fast.
When they were flying missions, there was like a setup in the Vegas area, and the pilots' families had no clue that they were doing anything special. They just go off to work and sometimes have more than one day on a mission, and really they were hopping into one of these guys and flying around the world during that time frame. And then they just go home and have dinner with their wives.
The Russian missile technology was getting so good that the CIA felt that eventually U-2, our current spy plane, would be shot down. And it was. Francis Gary Powers was shot down. And so they wanted to design a plane that could fly at 80,000 feet at Mach 3 to avoid the Russian missiles. And so they went to Lockheed and asked them if they could design the plane, and they did. The problem they had was that even though there's very little atmosphere at 80,000 feet, when this plane flies at Mach 3, what air up there, the friction raises the skin temperature in the front of the plane up to about 600 degrees and in the back to 1,200 degrees. So they could not use aluminum because aluminum starts to get soft and melt at 500 degrees. So the metal they had to use was titanium. It had the lightweight and could take the heat. The problem we had was that the United States has no titanium. We just have no titanium reserves. The biggest titanium reserves were in Russia. So the CIA set up a dummy corporation in Zurich, bought titanium from Russia, built a spy plane to spy on Russia. True story. If you look at the design, the bottom of it looks sort of like a surfboard, and actually when this thing is flying, about 40% of the lift comes from the air flowing underneath it, and then the wings will obviously provide the other ones. The SR-71 is and was, on its very first flight, the fastest airplane in the world and remains the fastest airplane in the world. No airplane has ever flown faster than the SR-71, even though it has not flown since 1990. If you've heard anything at all about the SR-71, you've heard that what's on the ground, it leaks like a sieve. The gas falls out, and that's because the outer skin of the airplane is also the inner skin of the fuel tank. So when the plane is on the ground, it leaks, because they could never build the plane with the touch of the plates touching each other, because when this plane flies, it grows 4 to 6 inches in length and 2 inches in width. Had they built the plane with metal plates touching each other, when it started to expand, it would have cracked like an eggshell. And they could never find a sealant that would work at 80 degrees below zero and 80 degrees above zero. So on the plane, when the metal contracted, the fuel leaked out of the plane. It carries 12,000 gallons of fuel. Sounds like an awful lot. It burns 8,000 gallons an hour. But it can fly a long distance in that 1 hour. But it gets about 3.2 miles to the gallon. Some RVs aren't getting that these days. So it can only fly for about an hour and 20 minutes, hour and 30 minutes. We have to come down, refuel, go back up.
So when they refueled this in the air, would it leak?
No, because by the time it was flying up there, it had sealed up. And the plates were touching each other. And when the plane took off, it normally was only half full, only carried about half fuel load to reduce the wear on the tires, so it's so heavy. So the first thing it did when it got up is it sped up, heated up, fueled up, and then sped up. So they would refuel almost immediately after they took off to their full load.
So a single pilot in this?
Two, the pilot in the front, and then they had an officer in the back who was responsible for monitoring the avionics. He would take care of the navigation. He would take care of the missile defense systems. If missiles were fired at it, he would operate those systems that would defend the plane against that.
So was the main purpose to take pictures?
Main pictures. Never had a gun on it, never carried a bomb. It was simply a photographic plane. The Air Force continually tried to scrap the program because it cost $100,000 an hour to fly it. You had to pre-position K-135Q tankers around the world to refuel it. The pilot, the train, the fuel, everything on this airplane came up to about $100,000 an hour to fly it. And all the missions were with the CIA. The Air Force got no benefit out of flying this plane. So they picked up the cost, but all the photographs went to the CIA.
It would have been so much fun to be a mechanic on these things. I love seeing how they're put together because they're so complex, but when you get down close, it's just a whole bunch of bolts holding it together. Now, I wouldn't be the guy engineering it, but the guy changing it out, that would be really fun. These are called dimple die holes. And what they do is they take a flat piece of sheet metal and dimple it in, maybe 3/8 of an inch. This creates incredible strength without adding any weight. We have seen this technology trickle down into race car building, and especially like roll cages and stuff. They will put dimple dies in that to save weight but increase the strength.
Early pressurized suits, they used a system of intricate laces to apply pressure mechanically. Check out the size of this landing gear, and it's got this massive hole in the side that they fold up into.
I know this is sacrilege to the aeronautical engineers out there, but this would make the coolest trailer/tiny house.
Wait, this thing is massive, but it can also land on water. Look at the pontoons, that's what we call them.
This is an M15 Snake Eye attachment on the back of the bomb. What it does was it acted almost like a mini parachute, and it slowed down the bomb because the planes would drop them from low altitude, and that means they'd explode soon. Without this, they'd explode and damage the plane dropping it. With this, it would slow down so the airplane could get out of the way and not be in the way of the blast when it exploded. Pretty cool technology.
They've got a whole section dedicated to women in the Air Force and the space programs. I've read about these seersucker uniforms. They were used in World War II, I think mainly in the Pacific Theater, where it was hotter, and the seersucker was lighter weight than the typical nurses' uniforms. They were also easier to launder. Kind of cool, they were pretty rare. Alright, the Blue Angels are something we've got to see on our travels.
Harriers are awesome. They can take off straight up with these jets that just direct straight down. Just levitate them.
They've got a tiny little sample of moon rock here.
This space gallery is really cool, and I just learned that Venus is the only planet the US didn't get to first. The Soviet Union got there first.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Your brother.
Bomb bay
And
doors are open.
50 below temperature.
50 below is a wind, and
Yeah.
they would have to get that bomb to drop. Wow.
Wow.
So the docent here was saying that the gunners, they actually had to be really good because in the beginning, they didn't have a single fighter that could actually make it as far as this bomber. And so in order to get to the destination and drop their bombs, they had to protect themselves, at least the end of the journey.
Oh my goodness.
So he's like he's shooting like between his legs.
Between his feet.
So, yeah, he's aiming through his feet.
Okay, that was my favorite part, was seeing inside of a B-17. That was really cool. And it makes me wish I could peek inside of more of these after seeing that. Smells like history.
A couple months ago, I read an article about the Air Force was trying to design a seat for their airplanes, and they took everybody's measurements and put them into a big equation and calculated the average everything and built a seat that fit the average human. But when it came time to sit in it, not one of the people fit because like they may have had the average leg length but not the right torso length or the width, and nobody fit in it by averaging all of it. I love the way they did their wiring back then. Yeah. You were so particular. How'd you like to tow that thing? Don't hit any bumpy roads, Bob. My favorite was the Blackbird, the SR-71. And one tip I was reminded when you come here is to talk to the people that work here. They know so much more about it than we do, and more than a little plaque could tell you. So reach out, talk to them, and they will tell you all the cool backstory. What a great day with great friends. We've done a lot of cool things with Steve and Courtney. This is the first one we've filmed. It's fun to be around other camera nerds, other Airstream nerds, other tiny house nerds, other full-timer nerds. And they're about to embark in April. So if you're not already subscribed, subscribe to their channel, A Streamin' Life. It's a great channel. They know more about living in a tiny space than we do. We may know a little bit more about moving around than they do, but together there's a lot of collective knowledge. And if you like Airstreams, you're gonna like their channel. Thanks for watching.